Oops. Hi, and welcome to the Brazen and Bold podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Gertillis. Everyone calls me Kevin. So if you're wondering why it sounds a little weird, I'm Haitian. We have weird names. It's part of how it goes. So as I mentioned, my name's Kevin. Everyone calls me Kevin's or Kevin. Either way works for me. Today is Sunday, January 25th. 2026. And I had this idea for a podcast for a little while now. And funny story, when I began thinking about a podcast last year, at the tail end of last year, 2025, I was hoping I would get some clarity on what I should do. And wouldn't you know, uh, I received an Amazon microphone, this one just right here, and a devotional around Christmas time, actually. So one of the things that I think God was talking to me to tell me is that I need to take this serious in 2026. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and about this format that I want to do for this podcast, okay? Or at least how I want it to be portrayed, I would say. First, we'll start with the podcast itself, and then we'll transition to the meat of the topic of the day, and then we'll set the table with something for you to think about, okay? Followed by the last thing, which will be our closing and possibly a challenge for the day or the week, depending on how I'm going to structure it. But I have an idea that, like, once I get and feel more comfortable, these challenges will be a little bit different every time. So I don't want this to feel too preachy, but I do want it to convey the message of the day, if that makes sense. So today's topic is navigating spiritual droughts. So what is a spiritual drought, right? So when we are often in faith, I feel like there's times when we feel like it's just like dead. And I'll give you an example. We're told that, like, faith is supposed to be this constant feeling of, being on a mountaintop, you get all goosebumps and your your prayers are being answered, right? But if we're being honest, sometimes the voice of God feels more like complete radio silence, right? And a few nights ago, uh, I was actually in my living room, just right here, walking around, trying to pray, trying to feel something, right? And finally, I just stopped. I looked up and I said, God, I'm doing my part. I'm showing up. Where are you? Right? And it felt disrespectful. It felt unchristian, right? But then I realized God isn't fragile, right? He can handle our frustration. I mean, he's been mad at us before, right? And in fact, I think he prefers our honest shouting over our polite whispering, if that makes sense. So if you're in a season where heaven feels like far from you, right? Or you're wrestling with your faith, hopefully today, this message will, like, help you to be bold and help you to, stand up again and rise up again. So today's message is, as I mentioned, navigating spiritual droughts, right? So one of the things that, like, you know, spiritual droughts, I would say a struggle that people do with spiritual droughts is they do more performative prayer, right? So what do I mean by performative prayer? We're doing prayer in front of other people where we feel like hollow inside. And I want people to know that it's not like bad to still pray, even though you don't feel like praying, if that makes sense. But the main thing I would say is just knowing that you can accept the silence not as absence. So if we pivot from, oh man, I'm not hearing from God today, or he's not coming through for me today, let's think of it in a way that says, hey, um, silence is not absence, right? How can we use that absence to our benefit, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is the bold truth, right? Dryness is often a sign of depth. Think about, like, the Israelites in the wilderness. They weren't in the desert because God was punishing them. They were there because God wanted them to be there at that time. And he wanted them to learn that they couldn't live on, like, yesterday's manna. It's always new manna that God's trying to give us, a new word every day, new bread, new life. He's trying to give us every day. And oftentimes when your prayer life feels dry, your spiritual life feels dry, it's usually an invitation to stop relying on your emotions and start relying on God's character. Like feelings are a great motivator, but they don't always become a great engine to do work. Sometimes you feel like brushing your teeth. Sometimes you feel like taking a shower, right? But at the end of the day, feelings won't make you take actions. So while we're looking at our faith as a whole, sometimes it feels like you're walking into a fog and you can't even see your own feet. So how do we overcome these things? I have a Bible verse I want to share with you guys. It's Psalm 77. I have it right here. And it's about this guy. His name is Asaph, Asaph. And he kind of talks about how like he's even struggling with his faith. And this is a guy that's like paid to feel God. He's like a pastor or worship leader kind of thing, you know? And even he couldn't like manage to like feel for God. And he talks about it through the Psalm. So let's go through it a little bit. Psalm 77, if you can find it. If you have a phone or if you have a Bible, I have my Bible right here. This one's from Hosanna Revival. I actually bought it online last year. It's pretty nice. Nice colors, nice pages. I could take notes and everything like that. So yeah, we can talk about it and we'll go from there. So Psalm 77 says right here, I cry out to God. Yes, I shout. Oh, that God would listen to me. When I was in deep trouble, I searched for the Lord. All night long I prayed, with hands lifted toward heaven. But my soul was not comforted. I think of God and I moan, overwhelmed with longing for his help. You don't let me sleep. I am too distressed even to pray. I think of the good old days, long since ended, when my nights were filled with joyful songs. I search my soul and ponder the difference now. Has the Lord rejected me forever? Will he never again be kind to me? Is his unfailing love gone forever? Has his promises permanently failed? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he slammed the door on his compassion? And I said, this is my fate. The Most High has turned his hand against me. But then I recall all you have done, O Lord. I remember your wonderful deeds of long ago. They are constantly in my thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about your mighty works. O God, your ways are holy. Is there any God as mighty as you? You are the God of great wonders. You demonstrate your awesome power along the nations. But your strong arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. When the Red Sea saw you, O God, its waters looked and trembled. The sea quaked to its very depths. The clouds poured down rain. The thunder rumbled in the sky. Your arrows of lightning flashed. Your thunder roared from the whirlwind. Lighting up of the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your road led through the sea, your pathway through the mighty waters. A pathway no one knew was there. You led your people along the road like a flock of sheep, and Moses and Aaron as their shepherds. So you could tell his battle, right? He's trying to say like, man, like, why can I not like praise you? Why can I not give it up to you, right? And one of the things that he's saying here, at least from my perspective, is that he's saying like, man, like I have to remember all the good things you've done, all the people you've helped, all the things you've done in the world. And that's the only way I can keep going. So as I mentioned, right, he's kind of relying on God's character here. And, you know, it's kind of like he's groaning in a sense, right? He's praying by groaning in a sense. Yeah, that's the best way I could describe it. Like, you know, when your stomach groans, right? You're like, oh, I'm so hungry. People around you kind of know, hey, okay, we got to feed this person, right? Like, it's kind of one of those things. But one of the things I want to say is maybe we can shift our perspective. Feeling God's presence and remembering the track record is something that he even talked about, right? Remembering God's track record, right? I know a lot of people who write in their Bible often, right? They take notes. Maybe they have a journal just to remember some of their prayers, wishes that they had for the year. And then they look back at the end of the year and say like, wow, what has God done for me? Because it's easy to forget these things, right? If we're in a season of turmoil and struggle, like that's tough to remember like all the good things someone did for you, right? But if we actually noted down that, hey, this is something that like I remember praying for, but I forgot that this thing happened at the end of the year, right? Even God says in the Bible that he'll multiply finances like tenfold, right? All these different things that he's promising, that he's keeping his promises for. But people, of course, we're mortal, right? We can forget easily some of the things that he's done in our lives. And we're just remembering only the bad stuff, right? So keep that in mind, right? And something I wanted to like, share was a bit of like people's perspective, right? So I asked a few people if they give me some, ideas of like things that make them feel like they're in a spiritual drought, right? So I got Mark here. Mark said that he feels like a hypocrite because he's bored during the worship, like while others are crying, right? Uh, he was saying that like he's he's bored in his form of worship, right? That doing it when it's easy, that's no problem. But when you're trying to do it for the Lord, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're, got that energy like you're at a concert or something. I asked Elena. Elena lost her dad and now feels numb towards God, right? So how can someone who's in emotional distress still give praise to God, right? To our God, the one and only true God, right? Um, Even in your numbness, right? That could be a prayer. Just telling him like, hey man, I feel numb. I'm not feeling it today. I'm not feeling it this month, this year. Maybe I come back in a little bit, but imagine that's like something so dis- disheveling, right? It really is going to shake you to your core when you lose somebody, a family member, right? I can't say that I've have moments of weakness for sure with my faith. I probably wrestled with certain areas, but losing someone as close as a dad, a mom, it definitely will shake your faith for sure. And the last thing I have here is Jackson. So Jackson falls asleep every time he prays because of his kids and the job. So probably living a busy life, right? Jackson is probably a teacher, maybe a blue collar guy, right? And, the busy life of, you know, being a Christian is not easy, right? You're supposed to be what people would say is close to perfection, right? But you can't be perfect, right? People lie, people steal, people cheat, probably break all the 10 commandments on a daily basis, right? But the idea is to strive for perfection, right? You can't be perfect every day. You try to strive for perfection every day. Something I want to talk about as well, trying to in your prayers when you feel like you're going through these droughts, sometimes it's God telling you that you're worshiping something else. Sometimes silence has more than words itself too, right? So maybe you're focused more on your video games or your wife or your kids, right? Whatever it is that's troubling you, that became your idol. So if we're idolizing things outside of God, maybe your job, a woman, money, whatever it might be, that could be something that God's trying to tell you through that silence, right? But you're not listening because you're listening to the other noise around you, right? So, how can we search for ourselves for that discernment to then cut through the noise that we're experiencing in life, right? Sometimes borrowing words, like I actually have a prayer application. It's actually a Bible application as well. And sometimes they give us like guided prayers. So sometimes if I can't think of the words to say in a prayer, I'll actually just use that Bible on my phone and I'll just follow the prayer for that day. And sometimes that'll, give me the motivation to keep going for that day, whatever it might be. I don't know how many times everyone prays out there, but it's everyone's discretion. I want to talk to people also about maybe working through service, right? Sometimes the best way to hear God is to be his hands for someone else when you feel empty. So if you're feeling empty today, maybe just go out there and do some good work, some volunteer work, maybe go at your local church or wherever you can actually, get your hands dirty and, be God's hands for that day, that week, that month. If you're really feeling, really in that drought, like I said. Um, I'd like to challenge you guys. Let's say use that word. I challenge you guys to something that's going to be a little bit interesting, a little bit unique. So I'm going to call this the empty chair challenge. If you're feeling like you're in a desert right now, you feel like you want to validate your faith. Faith isn't just a mood, right? It's a stance. You don't need a spark to start a fire, right? Sometimes you just need to keep striking that match until something catches, right? So before I pray for you, um, I'll tell you what a bit more about the challenge. So the challenge is going to be basically you're going to find an empty chair, right? You're going to sit the chair across from you. You're going to sit in a chair yourself or wherever you feel comfortable, maybe your bed, your couch, like I'm doing right now. And you're going to take 5 minutes, set a timer, and just tell God how frustrated you are. You can just say words like, God, I don't feel you. I'm tired. I feel like this might be a waste of time. Something like that, right? This is what I want you to say, right? And in the boldness, because this is a podcast, we want to be brazen and bold. Brazen being shameless, bold being, of course, bold. You're going to stay in that silence. This is the bold part. You're going to stay in that silence. You're not going to look at your phone. You're not going to put on a podcast. You're not going to put any praise music, right? You're just going to sit in that drought with God for 5 minutes. And if you could do this for the next, let's say, 7 days, I think you're going to see some growth. You're going to see something that's going to come out of you, make you feel motivated, maybe put a fire under you, right? Yeah, I think that's going to be something that we're going to do. So let me just pray for you real quick and we'll do that. So Lord, for the one listening who feels like their prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, for the one who feels like a hypocrite because the joy is gone, we thank you for the desert. We thank you for the silence that forces us to seek your face and not just your hands. Meet them in the quiet. Amen. So as I mentioned, that's the challenge for the week. Spend that 5 minutes and, hopefully you make a big moment out of it. Yeah. So I'm your host, Kevin. Stop waiting for the feeling. Start choosing the faith. Stay brazen. Stay bold.